The Andromedan scouting ship Vulekthar moved silently through the dark void of space, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant light of an unfamiliar yellow star. The ship's mission was simple: scan the system, assess the resources, and determine if there was any intelligent life. For the Andromedan Empire, expanding into new territories was routine. They had conquered countless planets, bending weak species to their will. But this time, something felt different. Commander Rovak, an experienced Andromedan officer, stood in the control room, watching the holographic map of the newly discovered Sol system. 9 planets orbited the Sun, but only one seemed significant: the third planet from the star. "We have detected a sentient species," reported a technician. "They call themselves humans." Rovak narrowed his large black eyes. He had encountered many primitive species before. They were usually weak, slow to evolve, and easily conquered. He expected the same from these humans. "Show me their technology," he ordered. The screen flickered, showing images of metal ships, towering cities, and strange devices powered by something called electricity. Rovak frowned. Human technology was crude, outdated, nothing compared to Andromedan advancements. Yet there was something odd about it. These ships, though simple, looked functional. Their weapons, though primitive, seemed deadly. "They reached space using fire and metal," the technician continued, "without advanced energy manipulation." Rovak smirked. How could a species so primitive survive in the galaxy? "Prepare a transmission," he said. "We will introduce ourselves. If they are intelligent, they will understand their place beneath us." The Andromedans had done this countless times before. A simple broadcast, a warning, an introduction, and an offer of surrender. Most species either submitted immediately or tried to resist, only to be crushed under Andromedan firepower. But when the transmission was sent, something went wrong. The ship's lights flickered. Screens glitched. A high-pitched static filled the air. "What is happening?" Rovak demanded. "The message is not sending," the technician stammered. "It is being interrupted." Rovak's eyes widened. That was impossible. The Andromedans had the most advanced communication systems in the galaxy. No species had ever been able to block their transmissions. Then, the main screen came alive with a sudden, chilling response. A simple human voice, distorted and mechanical, echoed through the ship. "Leave." Rovak's heart pounded. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Was that a message from them? One officer asked. "Impossible," another muttered. "Their technology is too weak for that." Rovak clenched his fists. "Try scanning their planet again." The ship's sensors hummed, gathering data. But then, the system crashed. Every screen went black. Sparks flew from the control panels. The entire ship shook violently, as if something invisible had grabbed hold of it. Alarms blared. The ship was being pulled. "The gravity is changing," an officer shouted. "We're being dragged toward the sun." Rovak's mind raced. No enemy ships had fired on them. No weapons had been activated. Yet his ship, one of the finest in the Andromedan fleet, was dying. "Emergency retreat," he barked. The pilots fought the controls, forcing the engines to life. With a loud roar, the Vulekthar broke free and shot away from the Sol system, its hull rattling as it fled. Silence filled the command room. The crew stood frozen, their faces pale with fear. No one spoke. Rovak turned to his technician, his voice barely a whisper. "What just happened?" The technician swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he reviewed the remaining data. I don't know," he admitted. Something didn't want us there." Rovak exhaled sharply. The Andromedans had conquered empires, faced terrifying enemies, and destroyed entire worlds. But never before had they been rejected by space itself. For the first time in his long career, Rovak felt something strange. Fear. His eyes locked onto the glowing dot on the star map. Sol. "Mark this system as unstable," he ordered. "No Andromedan ship is to return." As the scouting ship vanished into deep space, the message from Sol remained in the ship's logs. One word, one warning: leave. The Andromedan Empire was vast, stretching across hundreds of star systems. It had ruled over countless species, absorbing the weak and crushing any resistance. No planet, no civilization had ever forced them to retreat. Until now. Commander Rovak sat in the grand halls of the Andromedan High Command, his expression tense. The holographic projection of Sol system floated before the gathered leaders. The Council of Strategists, the most powerful minds in the Empire, stared at him in silence. "You are telling us," one of them finally spoke, "that a single species, with outdated technology, forced one of our most advanced ships to flee." Rovak straightened. "Not just the species, Honored One. The system itself." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. A star system attacking the ship. That was unheard of. One of the senior scientists, Torvel, adjusted his data tablet. "We need more information before we decide our next step. I suggest we send deep space probes to observe this Sol system from a safe distance." The council agreed. If they could not enter the system, they would study it from afar. A mystery of physics. Across the vastness of space, Andromedan probes activated near the edges of the Sol system. Tiny, nearly invisible, they sent waves of data back to the Empire. Their mission was simple: study the planet called Earth and its strange inhabitants. The results were confusing. "This does not make sense," Torvel muttered as he examined the reports. His assistant stood nearby, equally baffled. The data showed that human ships were built from simple materials: iron, aluminum, carbon-based composites. The Andromedans had seen such metals before, but they were considered outdated. Yet, somehow, human ships moved faster than they should. Their engines were inefficient, their weapons were basic, and yet they functioned better than they had any right to. "How are they doing this?" an assistant asked. Torvel frowned. "I don't know." The deeper they looked, the stranger the results became. Human soldiers could survive injuries that should be fatal. Their pilots could endure extreme G-forces that would kill most species. Their technology, though primitive, seemed adaptable. Even more disturbing was how humans reacted under pressure. Andromedans relied on logic, calculations, and probability. If they faced an unwinnable battle, they retreated. Humans did not. A battle simulation was run, comparing human tactics to Andromedan war strategies. The Andromedans had superior weapons, stronger ships, and better technology. But in every simulation, humans found a way to win. They used unpredictable moves, impossible strategies, and even sacrificed their own ships if it meant victory. One final test was conducted, a direct combat simulation against a captured human battleship. The results were horrifying. The Andromedans lost. Not once, not twice, but every single time. Torvel's hands trembled. This was not normal. This was not natural. "What is wrong with these creatures?" an officer whispered. No one had an answer. An unsettling discovery. Back in the Andromedan High Command, Rovak and the Council studied the findings. "This is madness," one of the strategists said. "Are you saying that these humans are stronger than us?" Torvel hesitated. "Not stronger, but something is different about them." He tapped the holographic display. The map of Sol system appeared again, glowing softly. "There is something unnatural about this system," he continued. "Every ship we send malfunctions. Every probe that gets too close disappears. It is as if the laws of physics themselves bend in humanity's favor." Silence filled the room. The idea was ridiculous, and yet there was no other explanation. Rovak exhaled slowly. He had felt it himself, the presence of something unseen, something powerful, watching them. One of the strategists, a hardened veteran, leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Torvel's voice was quiet. "We have two choices. We either leave them alone, or we wipe them out before they grow stronger." The room darkened. The fate of the Andromedan Empire might very well depend on this decision. And deep within the Sol system, humanity continued to grow. They had noticed the Andromedans watching, and they were preparing. The Andromedan High Command had made its decision. After weeks of analysis, debates, and unsettling discoveries, the ruling council agreed on one thing: humanity was dangerous. Their technology was primitive, their biology was fragile. And yet, they survived, adapted, and won battles they should have lost. For the Andromedans, this was unacceptable. A fleet was assembled, a massive invasion force, the largest ever deployed against a single species. Hundreds of warships, each armed with planet-destroying weapons, set their course for the Sol system. The plan was simple: no negotiations, no warnings. They would strike before humanity could become a true threat. And yet, something was wrong from the very beginning. The malfunctions begin. The Andromedan fleet had barely entered the outer edges of the Sol system when things started to go wrong. At first, it was small errors. Navigation systems flickered, energy readings became unstable, and minor technical issues slowed their progress. But soon, the problems grew worse. Weapons refused to charge. Shields powered down without explanation. Entire ships lost control of their engines, drifting helplessly in space. On the flagship Ruktal, Commander Xelver watched in growing horror as his once powerful fleet fell apart around him. "Status report," he barked. His officers scrambled to respond, but the reports made no sense. "The guidance systems are failing. The gravity stabilizers are acting strangely. Our sensors are giving false readings. We don't even know where we are anymore." Xelver clenched his fists. This was impossible. Their fleet was equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. No species, especially not one as young as humans, should have been able to interfere with their systems. But it wasn't humans attacking them. It was something else. The fleet falls apart. One by one, the Andromedan ships began shutting down. Some lost all power and drifted into the darkness. Others suddenly vanished. No explosion, no distress signal, just gone. Those that tried to escape found their jump drives unresponsive. They were trapped. On the Ruktal, Xelver's panic grew. "Can we fire at Earth?" he demanded. "Negative, Commander," an officer stammered. "Weapons are offline." Xelver felt a chill run through his body. This was no ordinary enemy. A deep, eerie silence fell over the bridge. The Andromedans were known for their control, their logic, their calm in battle. But now, fear crept into their voices. And then, without warning, the human response arrived. A single message appeared on every remaining ship's screen. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was the same message they had received before. "Leave." Xelver felt his heart pound. The message was written in their own language. No Andromedan had ever taught humans how to communicate with them. And yet here it was. How? How did they know? The retreat. Xelver had seen enough. He turned to his crew, his voice tight. "Get us out of here," he ordered. "But sir." Now, with great effort, the remaining Andromedan ships turned away from Sol. They limped back into deep space, humiliated, broken, and defeated. But even as they escaped, Xelver could feel it. The unseen force that had destroyed his fleet was watching, and it had chosen to let them go. The aftermath. When the fleet returned home, the Andromedan Council was speechless. Only a fraction of their warships had survived. No enemy had fired a single shot, and yet their greatest invasion force had been utterly crushed. What happened? One of the leaders demanded. Xelver, his eyes haunted, could only say one thing: Sol is not to be touched. From that day forward, an order was given. No Andromedan ship was to enter the Sol system again. Humanity had not fired a single weapon, and they had won. The Andromedan fleet's retreat from the Sol system was not just a defeat, it was a disaster. The Empire had never lost a battle like this before. No enemy had even fired at them, yet they had returned home with half their ships missing, their strongest weapons disabled, and no explanation for what happened. The news spread quickly. Across the Empire, whispers began. What had the fleet encountered? How could a species as young as humans defeat them without a fight? The High Council tried to control the information, but fear had already taken hold. And fear was dangerous, a scientist's warning. In the deep research laboratories of the Empire, Torvel, the chief scientist who had studied humanity, sat in front of the High Council. His hands trembled as he prepared his report. "You are one of our greatest minds," said a council member. "Tell us, Torvel, what are humans?" Torvel swallowed hard. "They are not like any species we have ever faced," he admitted. "Their biology is weak, their technology is old, yet they are impossible to defeat." He brought up a holographic display. Images of human history flashed before the council. Wars, disasters, and impossible victories. "They survive everything," Torvel continued. "Their world is harsh. Their own kind has fought endless wars, yet they always recover. They lose battles, but they win wars." The council remained silent as he spoke. "And their minds, they do not think like us. They do not follow the logic of war. They do not retreat when they should. They do not surrender when all hope is lost." Torvel turned to the High Council, his voice shaking. "Something is different about them. Something unnatural." The room was deathly quiet. A conqueror's doubt. Not all Andromedans accepted this fear. General Vokran, a warrior who had led countless invasions, stood in defiance. "We are the strongest empire in the galaxy," he growled. "And yet you tell me we should fear these humans." "They are an anomaly," Torvel said carefully. Vokran laughed. "Anomaly or not, they bleed, do they not? If they bleed, they can die." Torvel hesitated. "Yes, but they always return." Vokran stepped forward, his eyes cold. "Then we must strike again. Crush them before they grow too powerful." The High Council considered his words. Another invasion. After the first failure, the idea seemed reckless. But Vokran was not easily ignored. "Give me a fleet," he said. "I will burn their world before they even realize we are there." The council debated. They feared Sol, but they also feared looking weak. At last, they gave their answer. "No." Vokran's eyes widened in disbelief. "No. The risk is too great," the council leader said. "We will not return to Sol." Torvel added, "We do not even understand what we are fighting." Vokran clenched his fists. He was a warrior, a conqueror. To retreat was shameful. But the council had decided. The Andromedans would never attack Sol again. A growing legend. The Andromedan Empire continued to expand, conquering new worlds, defeating new enemies. But they never touched Sol. And soon, other empires began to notice. The Zarketh Dominion, the Ketheri clans, the Vazen Confederacy, all powerful civilizations who watched the Andromedans with caution. But when they saw that even the mighty Andromedans feared a single star system, they became curious. "What is in Sol?" the Vazan High Speaker asked one of their spies. The Andromedan agent shook his head. "You do not want to know." And so, the mystery of Sol grew. Rumors spread among the stars. Some said humans had the power to control gravity itself. Others whispered that Sol was protected by an ancient force. No one knew the truth, but everyone knew one thing. No one went near Sol. Humanity watches. On Earth, humanity had noticed the Andromedan retreat. They had seen the invaders approach. They had felt the presence of something watching them. But they did not know why the aliens had fled. Scientists, generals, and leaders across the planet studied the strange event. They saw the Andromedan ships malfunction. They saw them disappear. But humanity had done nothing. Or at least, they thought they had done nothing. Deep in the blackness of space, near the edges of the Sol system, something ancient and powerful stirred. Something that had been sleeping for a long time. And as the galaxy whispered in fear of humanity, it opened its eyes. The Andromedans had abandoned any plans to return to the Sol system. But the fear did not fade. Across the Empire, whispers continued. The greatest fleet had entered human space and returned broken. The High Council had declared Sol off-limits, an action unheard of in Andromedan history. Yet, no one truly knew why, and that made the fear even worse. A spy's mission. Not all Andromedans accepted this fear. Some refused to believe that a young, primitive species could defeat them without a fight. One of these skeptics was Kelro, an intelligence officer of the Andromedan Empire. Unlike the warriors who believed in conquest, Kelro believed in knowledge. He did not fear humans. He wanted to understand them. And so, against the orders of the High Council, he sent a probe into Sol. Not a warship, not an army. Just a small, invisible probe. A silent watcher. It slipped past the outer planets, past Jupiter's swirling storms, past Mars' dusty surface, and toward Earth. And for the first time since the retreat, an Andromedan laid eyes on humanity's homeworld. The unexplainable. Kelro stared at the data. Earth was ordinary. A blue planet filled with water, land, and an atmosphere suitable for carbon-based life. It was not a fortress. It was not protected by an energy field or an ancient weapon. And yet, there was something wrong. The probe's instruments picked up strange fluctuations, tiny distortions in gravity, electromagnetic waves that did not behave normally. As Kelro adjusted the sensors, the probe's data feed glitched. For a brief second, all screens in his lab turned to static. And then, leave. Kelro flinched. The message appeared in front of him, just like before. The same warning the fleet had received. But this time, something changed. The probe's camera, before it shut down completely, captured a final image. Kelro's eyes widened. His breath caught in his throat. Because in that single frame, he saw something. Not a ship, not a planet, not a human. A shape. A dark, shifting form floating beyond Earth's orbit, just barely visible against the blackness of space. And it was looking directly at him. The probe was gone the next second. Erased. Kelro sat frozen in his chair. What had he just seen? The Council learns the truth. Kelro had no choice. He had broken orders, but this was too important to keep secret. He brought his findings before the High Council. They watched in silence as the final image was displayed before them. A shadow, a presence, something waiting in Sol. Torvel, the chief scientist, exhaled shakily. This is what we have been sensing. Kelro's voice was low. What is it? No one had an answer. For the first time in Andromedan history, there was something in the universe that they could not explain. A presence that was not human, yet protected humanity. The council leader stood. His voice was steady, but Kelro could hear the fear beneath it. No ship, no probe, no being will ever enter Sol again. And so, the Andromedans closed their files on humans. They erased all plans to study them. And the greatest empire in the galaxy decided, once and for all, humanity was not to be disturbed. Humanity continues. On Earth, humans lived their lives, unaware of the fear they had spread across the stars. They built, they fought, they dreamed, and they explored. But some, in the deepest parts of their minds, felt something watching. A presence, unseen yet always there. Something that had existed long before them. Something that had awakened. And as humanity reached for the stars, it watched them with silent patience. Waiting, protecting, and preparing. The Andromedan Empire had made its decision. Sol was not to be touched. No ship, no spy, no probe would ever enter human space again. The files were erased. The warnings were obeyed. But not everyone forgot. Across the galaxy, in dark corners of space, some still whispered of the thing that lurked in Sol. And one of them wanted answers. The rogue captain. Far from the Andromedan homeworld, on a hidden research station, the lone ship prepared for launch. Its captain, Vorlek, was not like other Andromedans. He was a hunter of secrets, a collector of forbidden knowledge. He had heard the stories. He had read the erased files, and he did not believe in ghosts and myths. If the High Council fears something, that means there's something worth finding, he muttered. His crew, a small team of outcasts, were nervous. Captain, this is madness, one of them whispered. Vorlek only smiled. Then let's see how mad I really am. The ship jumped to Sol. The unseen barrier. Vorlek expected resistance. He expected human ships, planetary defenses, maybe even the mysterious force that had crippled the first Andromedan fleet. But as his ship emerged at the edge of the system, nothing happened. His scanners picked up planets, moons, asteroid belts. Everything was normal. See, he said, smirking. Nothing to fear. He ordered the ship forward. Jupiter loomed ahead, its massive storms swirling like a living beast. Beyond it, the small blue dot of Earth waited. They moved closer. Then, the ship stopped. Not by engines, not by controls. It simply stopped moving. What just happened? Vorlek demanded. The pilot panicked, pressing buttons, pulling levers. We didn't stop, Captain. Something stopped us. Vorlek's smirk faded. A deep, humming sound filled the ship, not from outside, but inside their minds. And then, across every screen, every panel, every device, the same word appeared. Leave. Vorlek's blood ran cold. The presence awakens. The ship's lights flickered. The air felt heavier, as if an invisible force was pressing down on them. One of the crew members screamed, "Captain, look outside." Vorlek turned toward the viewing window, and his heart stopped. Something was there. Not a ship, not a planet, a shadow in space. It had no shape, no form, but it was there. It shifted, darker than the void, watching them. The ship's alarms blared. Systems failed one by one. Then, a whisper. Not from the ship, not from any speaker. It spoke inside their minds. "You should not be here." Vorlek gasped, his hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he knew true fear. The escape. "Turn us around," Vorlek choked out. "But Captain, turn us around now." The pilot scrambled, manually forcing the engines to engage. The ship trembled as the shadow moved closer. The presence did not attack. It did not fire weapons. It simply existed. And that was enough to break them. The ship ripped itself away from Sol, fleeing faster than it had ever moved before. The shadow did not follow. It did not need to. The final warning. Back in Andromedan space, Vorlek collapsed in front of the High Council. He was no longer a rogue, no longer a defiant hunter of secrets. He was a broken being. I saw it," he whispered. "It knows. It sees everything. It let us go." Torvel, the chief scientist, spoke softly. "What did you find?" Vorlek's hands trembled. His voice cracked. "We were never meant to be there." The council chamber was silent. And then, at last, the High Council gave its final command. No ship, Andromedan or otherwise, would ever enter Sol again, because something was waiting there, and it was watching. Humanity moves forward. On Earth, humans continued their lives, unaware of the terror their system had caused. They built cities, launched ships, and looked toward the stars with curiosity. And as they moved forward, the presence in the dark watched them. It had been there before them, and it would be there long after, waiting. guarding, protecting. The Andromedans had finally accepted the truth. Sol was not to be touched. No fleet would return. No spies would investigate. The fear had won. But fear spreads, and soon the rest of the galaxy began to ask the same question. Why did the Andromedans fear Sol? The curious ones. The galaxy was vast, filled with empires, warlords, and explorers. The Andromedans were powerful, but they were not the only force in the stars. And when they abandoned an entire star system, others took notice. The Zarketh Dominion, a race of brutal conquerors, saw it as weakness. The Ketheri clans, merchants and spies, saw it as a mystery. And the Vazen Confederacy, ancient and wise, saw it as something far worse. But one group did not just wonder. They decided to find out. The Zarketh fleet. The Zarketh were not like the Andromedans. They did not fear the unknown. They crushed it. So when they heard the Andromedans had fled from a single system, they laughed. "Their fear is our opportunity," said Warlord Krell, leader of the Zarketh. "If the Andromedans will not take Sol, then we shall." A fleet of 100 warships was assembled. They did not sneak in like spies. They did not send probes like scientists. They marched into Sol like conquerors, and they did not come alone. Warlord Krell himself led the fleet, eager to claim the planet called Earth. As their ships entered the system, they sent a single message to humanity. "You belong to us now." They expected fear, surrender, desperation. Instead, they received silence. And then the stars changed. The arrival. The Zarketh fleet was powerful. They had burned worlds, destroyed empires. They feared nothing. But as they moved deeper into the Sol system, their ships began to fail. Engines flickered, weapons shut down, and the stars around them shifted. Dark shapes, just at the edge of vision, moved. Krell watched from the bridge of his warship. "Report. What is happening?" His officers struggled with the controls. Nothing responded. And then, across every screen, every device, the word appeared. "Leave." Krell snarled. "Who dares command us?" The shadows answered. They stepped forward. The fear takes hold. They were not ships. They were not life forms. They were something else. Massive, formless beings, darker than the void, moving through space like living nightmares. The Zarketh had fought many enemies, but they had never fought something that should not exist. And then the whispers began. Inside their minds. Inside their souls. "You were warned." Krell's warriors screamed. These were not just voices. They were memories. Each Zarketh saw visions, their worst fears, their greatest regrets, their final moments. Some collapsed, lifeless. Others turned their weapons on themselves. Krell himself trembled. For the first time in his life, he knew what it meant to be powerless. And then the Presence spoke one final time. "Go." The Zarketh fleet fled. Not as warriors, not as conquerors, but as broken beings. They would never speak of what they had seen, and they would never return. The galaxy watches. The Zarketh Dominion was silent. Their greatest fleet had entered Sol and returned in fear. And now, the rest of the galaxy understood. The Andromedans had not fled out of weakness. They had fled because they had seen the truth. Sol was not just a system. It was a tomb, a prison, a place where something ancient watched and waited. And the only reason humanity still existed was because it allowed them to. No one else would dare to test Sol again. No empire, no fleet, no explorer. Sol belonged to something else, something that had been there long before humans, something that would be there long after. And as humanity continued to grow, to explore, to reach for the stars, it watched, it waited, and it whispered, "Not yet." The galaxy was silent. The Andromedans had run. The Zarketh had fled in terror. And now, every empire, every ruler, Every species understood one thing. Sol was forbidden. No one would enter. No one would disturb it. But then, for the first time in history, Sol spoke. The signal. In the far reaches of space, on a deep space listening post, the Vozen Confederacy maintained its silent watch. The Vozen were among the oldest races in the galaxy. They had lived long enough to see the rise and fall of countless empires. They had not sent ships to Sol. They had not challenged the warnings. They only observed, and on this day, their sensors detected something impossible. A signal. From Sol. The station commander, an elder named Heratal, stared at the data. "Is this a mistake?" one of her officers asked. "No," Heratal whispered. "It is real." For centuries, Sol had remained silent. But now it was reaching out, and the galaxy had no choice but to listen. The decoding. The message was not in any known language. It was not human. It was not Andromedan. It was something else. The best minds of the Vozen worked day and night, decoding, analyzing, searching for meaning. Then, after weeks of effort, they succeeded, and what they found changed everything. The message was not a threat. It was a warning about something far beyond the galaxy, something that was coming. And the only reason the galaxy had been safe for so long was because of Sol, the Council of Many. For the first time in history, the great empires of the galaxy gathered in one place. The Andromedans, the Zarketh, the Ketheri, the Vozen, and many more. They had been enemies, rivals, competitors. Now, they sat side by side, staring at the decoded message. "The presence in Sol is not a destroyer," Heratal said. "It is a guardian." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "It has been protecting this galaxy," she continued, "keeping something else from finding us." Warlord Krell, still haunted by what he had seen in Sol, clenched his fists. "Protecting us? From what?" No one spoke, because no one knew. Only one thing was certain. Whatever it was waking up, and soon it would come. The human response. As the galaxy debated, argued, and feared, humanity remained unaware. On Earth, life continued as normal. Wars were fought. Cities grew. Technologies advanced. And in the endless void above, their first interstellar ships prepared for launch. Humanity had spent centuries looking at the stars, dreaming of what lay beyond. Now, for the first time, they were ready to leave Sol. Their first colony ships, Destiny, Hope, and Voyager, were set to depart for nearby stars. The first step toward a greater future. But as they prepared for their journey, something watched. Something waited. And just as the first ship was about to enter faster than light travel, a new message appeared on every human screen. A message not from Earth, not from any known source. A message from Sol itself. The final words. All across Earth, on every device, every screen, in every language, the words appeared. "You are not ready." And in that moment, every human ship lost power. Engines failed. Lights dimmed. The colony ships, destined for the stars, were stopped. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Just held in place, as if the universe itself was telling them to wait. And then, just as suddenly, the power returned. The screens cleared. The presence was gone. But the message had been heard. Humanity's time had not yet come. But soon it would. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The message had been heard. You are not ready. It echoed through the galaxies, through the hearts of empires and conquerors alike. The mighty Andromedans, the once fearless Zarketh, the wise Vozen, all had learned to fear Sol. But humanity was different. They did not run. They did not bow. They did not forget. They asked why. The unstoppable will of humanity. The colony ships had stopped. held in place by an unknown force. But Earth did not see it as a warning. They saw it as a challenge. Scientists, leaders, thinkers, they worked day and night to understand the presence that spoke from the dark. What was it? Why was it stopping them? What did it mean by not ready? The rest of the galaxy held its breath. Would the humans obey? Would they accept their limits? No, they had never done so before. And they would not start now. The breakthrough, deep in a hidden research facility on Earth, a discovery was made. A scientist, name lost to history, stared at the data with wide eyes. They had detected something buried within the message from Sol. Not just a warning, a puzzle, a test. And if there was a test, that meant there was a way forward. The great debate. The leaders of Earth gathered. Some feared the unknown. Some wanted to wait. But others, the explorers, the dreamers, the ones who had always looked up at the sky, refused to stop. Humanity has never been ready, one leader said. And yet, we have always moved forward. The decision was made. They would solve the test. They would unlock the truth of Sol. And then, they would leave. The final journey. A single ship was built. It was not a warship. It was not a colony ship. It was something new, a vessel designed for one purpose, to speak with whatever waited in the darkness of Sol. As it left Earth, the galaxy watched in fear. Would this be the end of humanity? Would they be erased for daring to defy the warning? No one knew. And then, something answered. The awakening. The ship reached the edge of the system. Silence. Darkness. Then, the stars moved. Or rather, something beyond the stars moved. The shadow, the presence, the thing that had always watched. It revealed itself. Not in words, not in sound, but in understanding. And in that moment, humanity saw the truth. Sol was not just a system. It was a gate, a barrier between the galaxy and something else. Something ancient, something waiting, and the presence that had warned them. It was not their enemy. It was their protector. For eons, it had held the gate shut. But now, it was weakening. The test had not been for humanity's obedience. It had been for their strength. And now, the presence whispered its final words. Prepare. Then, it was gone. The gate trembled. The barrier cracked. And from the other side, something stirred. The future begins. The ship returned to Earth. The crew, forever changed, delivered the final truth. The universe was much bigger than anyone had imagined. Sol had been a shield, but shields do not last forever. Something was coming. Something beyond the Andromedans, beyond the Zarketh, beyond anything the galaxy had ever faced. And only one species had been chosen to stand against it. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the oldest, but because they refused to stop, because they never gave up, because they were human. And now, their true journey was about to begin. Epilogue. The final warning. Across the galaxy, ancient sensors flared to life. The old ones, the silent watchers, the beings who had hidden for eons, they felt the shift. The gate had cracked. The humans had stepped forward. And the thing beyond, it had noticed. The time of peace was over. The time of war had begun. And the first battle would be fought in Sol. The end